Steve Rogers and the Avengers were selfish and they caused the end of the multiverse. Everything that happens in Avengers Doomsday will be their fault. So let me explain. Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. And did you ever wonder about where Steve Rogers went to after he returned the Infinity Stones? So I'm going to walk you through each return step by step. And we got a theory that explains how his careless actions created Doctor Doom and set off a chain reaction that will destroy the multiverse. Now look, maybe all of you haven't been following the MCU as closely as you did a few years ago, but it seems likely that the big problem in Avengers Doomsday is going to be incursions.
An incursion occurs when the boundary between two universes erodes and they collide, destroying one or both entirely.
Now, during the multiverse saga, we have seen that many different events can threaten a universe. Rewriting time, a favorite character dying, not getting into college, reading the wrong book, possessing yourself from another universe. All of these actions can trigger an incursion, and we think that Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom is going to be dead set on a mission to stop incursions. And that mission started with Avengers Endgame. So I know you guys remember the plot of Avengers Endgame. The Avengers want to undo the snap and bring people back from the dead. So they time travel to steal 6 Infinity Stones so they can then snap everybody back. And Hulk is very clear that time travel does not actually change the present.
If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, which can't now be changed by your new future.
Instead, every time they go back in time, they create a branching reality. Now, this part is key. The Ancient One tells Bruce,
"Now this may benefit your reality, but my new one, not so much. Without our chief weapon against the forces of darkness, millions will suffer."
So Bruce makes her a deal. They will return the stones and restore reality. So this is implying that after the stones are returned, that these tangent realities just kind of absorb back into that main 616 timeline. But here's where it gets complicated, like MCU Phase 5 complicated. Remember when Loki stole the Tesseract and then jumped away? Well, in the show Loki, that story goes on for 12 episodes of the show. Loki is arrested by time cops called the TVA, and very long story short, Jonathan Majors wants him to take over his job overseeing the sacred timeline. Loki refuses because he doesn't want to deny people free will, and he believes that the multiverse should be allowed to branch as much as it wants. So instead, Loki tries to preserve this multiversal loom that keeps the multiverse from dying. Now, a scientist there says that the loom's job is,
it deletes the ones that aren't supposed to be there.
But once the loom is destroyed, there's nothing to keep these timelines in check, and so they branch and branch and branch onto infinity. But this doesn't work, and Loki finds another way. He holds the multiverse together himself, allowing endless branches to occur, and trillions upon trillions of people begin to exist and thrive. Okay, so that's the plot of the show Loki, but get this. Because the TVA exists outside of time, all of that happens within a second in Avengers Endgame. Literally, from the moment Loki teleports away to the next shot of Tony on the ground, all of the multiverse changes in that one cut. That means that when Steve returns the Infinity Stones at the end of the movie, that those realities that we thought were going to be reabsorbed are not reabsorbed. They have continued to grow and expand because the multiverse is now a giant branching tree. This is because the loom is gone, and the loom is what was destroying all those realities. So let's look at how Steve Rogers and the Avengers screwed up all of these timelines and how this leads to the creation of Doctor Doom. So Doug, what do you think about that? Oh, right. Doug is running errands in his little car.
Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming. Right to the roars and I get the ground running.
All right, well, I guess Doug will be back later.
Here I am.
Oh, great. Do you have that gas receipt?
There you go.
Why, thank you. You guys are probably wondering what I'm doing. See, I'm taking a photo of this receipt so I can get $5 off this tank of gas. And I'm doing this with the free Upside app, one of the best sponsors we work with here at the channel. Upside gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and restaurants. The app has more than 100,000 partnering businesses, and it is incredibly easy to use. You open the app, find participating locations, click claim, and then you upload your receipt. Upside has given back $1 billion to its users. In fact, top Upside earners are making as much as $300 a month. No confusing rewards, points, or credits. Just actual money you can transfer straight to your bank account. I love this app. Like, I recently moved, and being in a new location has meant all of these new expenses. Lots more driving, grocery shopping, and sometimes I just want to sit down and eat a nice meal at a new restaurant. But Upside is a great tool that really helps me to spend smarter. People can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside than other products. Now this includes loyalty programs and credit card rewards, and what I like most is just how easy it is to use. Each week, Upside users are earning $1 million in cash back. Now to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description or use this QR code to download Upside and use code ScreenCrush to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That is a great deal and it's very much worth your time. This is quick and easy and it's a great way to earn money. Now back to what I was saying. So let's go through everything the Avengers did and the realities they screwed up, then we'll talk about Doom. First of all, Steve is returning these stones without their containment units, so the timelines are going to be drastically different just because of that. When he left, he thought that all he had to do was return the stones to their reality and then the reality would magically heal itself. And now we know that's not the case. So let's start with 2013, even though I think this would probably be Steve's last stop so he could use the hammer on his journey. Steve needs to return the ether, which is normally a floating gooey ball, but Thanos somehow shaped it into a rock, so that's how Steve is going to be returning it. That means that when he arrives in 2013, he can't just inject it into Jane Foster and then like reinfect her with it. Instead, he'll hand over the hammer and the ether to Thor and call it a day. I know you don't want to remember Thor the Dark World, but think about where we were in the events of Thor the Dark World here. Jane had arrived on Asgard and she had just learned that Malekith wanted that magic Kool-Aid that was inside of her.
Oh yeah!
Odin wanted to keep Jane on Asgard while Thor wanted to use her as bait so Malekith would pull the ether from her. But now, Thor doesn't need to do that. Jane is already separated from the stone, so all the Asgardians have to do is keep the ether away from Malekith until after the convergence. So that means that maybe Frigga doesn't die, which means that hopefully Loki never poses as his dad unless he wants to hit for the Oedipus cycle, which means Odin gets his Odin sleep, Hela is never brought back, and Ragnarok does not occur. And maybe Thanos and his forces are not able to defeat Asgard and take the Tesseract. Well, at least not with an invasion. But Thanos could probably get help from Loki to infiltrate the palace and steal the Tesseract. This is because Frigga never died, so Loki never has a change of heart and he remains a villain. So in this reality, Loki could have helped Thanos invade the palace, kind of like how he gave advice to Curse.
You might want to take the stairs to the left.
And this also means that the Hulk would stay on Sakaar, so he's not around to help during the events of Infinity War or Endgame, which means that no one ever shows up to warn Tony and Doctor Strange about Thanos. So Thanos has a much easier time getting the stones. And this also means that Professor Hulk is never created and Bruce can't help invent
Time travel!
And in this reality, Bruce is not in on the time heist, so a different Avenger has to snap and bring everybody back. And maybe that Avenger is Thor, but the shock kills him. Then, without Thor and Hulk's help, the Avengers lose and Thanos reduces this entire reality down to atoms. And maybe all of that meddling and different choices would cause so many universes to spread that they would all start causing different incursions. And we're going to hear this all throughout the video. When a timeline branches, the growth from that is exponential and creates exponential opportunities for incursions and destruction. Think of the multiverse like a tree, and the incursions are rot that spreads through different universes. But that is nothing compared to how much they screwed up 2012. Now I know some of you were saying, wait, the TVA pruned that reality in the show Loki. And they did, kind of. Remember, we still see Steve and Tony and everybody else hanging out in that reality working through a plan. So that means the TVA pruned the reality from a slightly later point in time, so that other branch where Steve and Tony were talking about where to get Pym particles, that branch continued on. Now, in this 2012 version, the Time Stone goes back to the Ancient One, and now she has even more faith that Doctor Strange is the best of all of them. Maybe this means that when she meets Doctor Strange, she gives him a little bit more leeway and isn't as strict with her guidance. Could be that she never utters these vital words.
It's not about you.
And so this version of Strange becomes more like Strange Supreme, or really all the other versions of Doctor Strange we've ever seen, who always seem to become villains in every reality. Also, think about the Mind Stone. Now it's just a raw artifact, no staff. So Steve wouldn't give it back to S.H.I.E.L.D. because he knows S.H.I.E.L.D. is Hydra, so who does he give it to? I mean, not Tony, because he would just run off and create Ultron, or maybe he would skip the middleman and give it straight to Tony because, you know, creating Ultron created the Vision, which turned out just fine in his reality. But I think it seems like he would also give the Mind Stone to Thor for safekeeping. But Odin would immediately send that stone to the Collector because
It is not wise to keep two Infinity Stones so close together.
And this is also a reality where Steve knows that Bucky is alive and that Hydra thinks Steve is one of them. So all of the events of the Winter Soldier happen even more quickly, but maybe this time S.H.I.E.L.D. loses. But worst of all, in this reality, Thor never takes the Tesseract to Asgard, which means that Odin can't use the cube to fix the Bifrost.
Wait, Odin used the Bifrost to fix the cube?
Other way around, but that's really just kind of my own headcanon. See, I think Odin used the Tesseract to create the Bifrost back when he was out conquering the 9 realms. But then he hid it on Earth Earth, so he wouldn't be tempted to keep using it. So in 2012, the Bifrost isn't fixed, which means that the 9 realms remain in chaos like Thor said.
I know, but the Bifrost was destroyed. The 9 realms erupted into chaos. Wars were raging. Marauders were pillaging.
But that also means that Thor wouldn't be able to go to Earth to get Jane, Malekith gets the ether way easier, and I guess darkness spreads across the 9 realms. And that darkness could have spread because remember, Steve was not able to return the Tesseract to this timeline because Loki stole it. So when the Ancient One said that losing an Infinity Stone made their timeline vulnerable to darkness, this could have been what she was talking about. And again, that darkness probably causes an incursion, which causes realities to collide and get screwed up, and rot spreads to other parts of the tree. But all of this is nothing compared to how messed up the 2014 universe is. But before I dive into 2014, I want to remind you guys that we are doing one more encore live show in New York for Comic-Con weekend. We will be at City Winery on Friday, October 10th for the live show that ties up the tour and ends the storyline that we were telling. Come meet us for exclusive breakdowns, live Q&As, and just a chance to nerd out with us and get to meet you face to face. That's my favorite part of the live shows. Ticket links are below. So the Avengers took away the Power Stones, so Peter will never turn on the Ravagers, which means he'll never get arrested and never meet Rocket and Groot. Nebula is dead, Gamora is gone, she's in a different reality, and Thanos and all of his minions are wiped from existence. And if Steve returns the Power Stone to Morag, then maybe the Ravagers collect it and sell it to Ronan, and Xandar is destroyed. But don't forget, Ego is still out there looking for his son, and of course he'll have a harder time since he never hears about a guy holding an Infinity Stone.
When I heard of a man from Earth who held an Infinity Stone in his hand without dying.
But eventually, Ego would track down Yondu and then find Peter, so there's nothing to stop the expansion and everybody dies. But the real loser in this reality is Rocket. He never makes any friends, has no emotional catharsis with his past, and probably the High Evolutionary captures and tortures him to death if the expansion doesn't kill him first. But the weirdest thing about this trip is that Steve has to return the Soul Stone to Vormir with the Red Skull waiting on him. Now, Infinity War made it seem like the Red Skull was performing a kind of eternal penance for his crimes. But when the stone was released, does that mean he gets to go free? Has the Red Skull truly seen the error of his ways? See, I think the Red Skull would know that Steve is planning on going back in time and being with Peggy, and then he would warn Steve about the damage that he was going to cause. But then, as we know, Steve still goes through with it so he can have his dance with Peggy. Now that is an interesting reversal where the Red Skull is kind of the hero and Steve is the person being selfish and stubborn and not listening to reason. However, the biggest change, I think, comes in 1974, and this is the universe where I think Dr. Doom could be born. Steve returns the Space Stone to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters without a cube or a containment unit. It is just raw power that they can access. Now that could mean that Zola, once again, is able to use the energy of the stone to make weapons, and maybe this means that Hydra makes its move way earlier. But this would also mean that Mar-Vell never creates a prototype ship, and Carol Danvers never becomes Captain Marvel. Ronan and the Supreme Intelligence invade Earth, and maybe Odin steps up to defend one of the 9 realms. So that means that we would have a war between the Kree and the Asgardians on Earth. So now people on Earth know that aliens exist, it's global chaos, and that is the moment that Hydra was waiting to make its move. Howard Stark would be assassinated sooner, and Tony Stark grows up being a ward of Hydra, somebody who is unloved and is raised to believe in absolute order. And this is where I think we get the origin of Dr. Doom. Now the Russos have said that no one else could play this version of Dr. Doom, and that his origin is tied to the snap. So, I mean, we've theorized in lots of videos before that Doom will be a version of Tony that survives the snap in Endgame. But what if instead it's this version of Tony Stark from this 1974 reality? A version that never had the Avengers, never had Pepper Potts, a version where he was raised as the heir to inherit the Hydra Empire. That version of Tony would have armor that survives the snap. And I think controlling the Infinity Stones would give him the cosmic awareness to see the multiverse, just like what happened with Ultron.
He became aware of another. He became aware of the... I see you.
This is a Tony that was raised to respect order above all, so he would study the multiverse, and he would see the disorder and chaos caused by the variants of He Who Remains. But most importantly, he would also see the incursions threatening an infinite number of universes. And worst of all, he would discover that his universe is actually just an offshoot, the result of the Avengers tampering with time, and that his universe was destined to die in an incursion. So now we have a version of Tony Stark, the ultimate futurist, who was raised to believe in ultimate order. He wants to stop incursions and end this freewheeling, ever-branching multiverse. He wants to bring the Avengers to heel and consolidate everything into one simplified, ordered universe, battle world. And if he controls this universe, then he can make everyone safe, a suit of armor around the multiverse. And that is how Steve Rogers and the Avengers can create Doctor Doom. Now, I want to give credit here to a great video from Colton Ogburn, the guy who's trapped in our TV but doesn't know it, so please don't tell him. On his own channel, Colton suggested that the old Steve we see in Endgame has actually lived through the events of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, and that the shield he gives Sam is actually his own shield from the future, which we also touched on in this video. Now, regardless though, the Russo brothers have one hell of a mess to clean up here. I do think they have to take the events of Avengers Endgame and then tie them into Doomsday and Secret Wars. So, do you think Tony Doom is going to be raised as a Hydra agent? Do you think the multiverse is way too complicated? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or at me on Twitter, Blue Sky Threads, or are free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time here and you like this video, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.